can just introduce my panel to you. We have Richa from Zivame.com, Jalak Jobanputra from FuturePerfect Ventures, and Sairee Chahal from Sheroes.in. So just to begin this, I think it'd be a good place to begin by talking about failure itself. Because everyone talks about the success stories and what people do successfully. But failure and entrepreneurship really go hand in hand. So I was wondering if I can learn from this and go to each of you to ask, can you give us a few examples that you've seen of failure in your journey so far?
Running a startup means you are experiencing failures every day. And I think failure at least gives you a sense of having tried. And that is important than not having tried at all. And if you are not failing, you are not creating, you're not building. So for us, I wouldn't say in my own personal context, I see failures as big or small. I deal with failure in as much of indifference and apathy as much as I deal with success, is what I would say.
But Jalak, you would have seen more, not personally maybe, but more other people and startups failing. And really, have you seen examples of people learning from it? Does it contribute in their future success?
Yes, absolutely. So most venture-funded companies end up failing, in the term, in the way we think about it. But so many of those entrepreneurs that may not have succeeded in their first go-around end up starting companies where they do apply a lot of their learnings. And so that's one of the reasons a lot of venture capitalists like to back entrepreneurs who've done it before. And yes, it's helpful if they took a company public, but it's just as meaningful or also meaningful if an entrepreneur knows why he or she didn't succeed the first time around and is hungry to try it again and apply those learnings and make a go of it and succeed the next time around.
Sairee, you do have personal experience here. You talked about ventures that you have looked at. Can you tell us some about that?
All right, so I did my first startup in '99. The company was fairly successful, and post which there were two other ventures in the middle. One was moderately successful, one was a super flop. I'm on to my fourth venture now. And the thing I've learned along the way is the ones that failed or ones that failed miserably didn't have as much of my passion or my ability to give it my all as much as the one that succeeded. So that's one clear fit. And of course, then there are a lot of logical reasons why failures happen. Fits, teams, funding, markets, timing, execution, all of that is a given. But I think, and passion sort of brings a story of persistence, right? And I think that's sort of what I've learned from failure, that if it has all what I got, then it has a better chance to succeed. If my heart's not in it, then I'm not going to it may just fail. It just has less soul.
But it's interesting you mentioned passion. So if I were to ask you to pin down certain characteristics that you've all seen in successful ventures, both in the founder as well as the company, shall we say the top 3 characteristics that a successful startup should have? Can I just ask you to list some of those?
I think, what we call passion, in Zivame, we call it a sense of purpose, and that flows top down, right? So everybody in the organization at any level needs to have a sense of purpose. Whether you have a graphic designer or you have your head of business, they need to know what they are doing actually impacts and creates something bigger, larger than what they would have imagined. So that's one. The second is a very strong sense of collaboration. A startup is not really about one rock star. It's actually about multiple rock stars. And if you don't collaborate, you will never, I feel you will never succeed. The third is a push towards becoming better every day, every week, every month, every quarter, every year. Which means most people that join us can, when they were to look back, would they say, I never thought I could do this. And this company, this team helped me or enabled me to do this. So it's very important to have a sense, a mentorship, a culture of around mentorship. I think these three things I would say would be very top on my list.
But Jalak, if I can ask you, when you look at a company, um, do you look at the founder more or the company more?
That's the billion-dollar question that I always get asked. So, and it's a great question. And common wisdom is that if you have an A-plus founder with a B idea, it's better than having a B founder with an A idea. And I think, look, especially when you're investing at the early stage, so much is going to change over the course of a company's evolution, right? I mean, Google did not start off as a search engine. And so you do need to look for founders that, yes, are passionate about their idea, are dedicated to their idea, but also maintain enough flexibility to understand when it is time to pivot, and yet they don't give up too easily. So that is a fine line, which not everyone can tread that fine line. So I would say the founder is still the most important piece of the evaluation. The idea matters. I'd say timing matters a lot, and there's so many ideas that I evaluated in 1999 and 2000 that are now just becoming feasible from a business model perspective, and so that doesn't mean that these entrepreneurs, I mean, they had almost too much vision. They were too ahead of the time, and so that's also something that's important in the evaluation.
Sairee, if I can ask you, I mean, do you look at the founder? Do you look at the company? What would be the, other than passion, but what would be the characteristic that you look for?
I would sort of put persistence pretty much as the real deal, followed by the ability to build relationships and manage the timing. I think a lot of business success is all about market timing, managing a whole lot of not only the internal organization play, but also the market play. I would sort of give it that.
You talked about timing. That brings me to the question that when startups, like you said, Google didn't start out as a search engine. So do you stay focused on one path, or do you evolve as a company? I mean, it's not easy sticking to the original vision either, but do you stick to it or do you evolve? What would you give more credit to?
So I think if you know what is the problem you set out to build to solve in the first place, that itself is a very large hook that sets the tone of who you're going to be. And somewhere along the way, the ability to very clearly say, this deal is off if certain parameters kick in, or we are definitely not going to do A, B, C. There is always a way to stay in business, but when is it you say that this business doesn't make me do as much? When is it that your passion runs out? Like in our business, we very, very clearly said, this is the large problem we want to solve. We are very happy to take very diverse approaches to solve it, till such time it stays true to the larger goal we set out to do. The day I think we stop doing that, or that sort of doesn't hold true, then we have to really reevaluate and say, do we still want to do it? Do we still want to stay as engaged? Do we break it down?
But Jalak, you see a lot of them in the very early stages. And like you said, how much do they change? How much do they stick to the first kind of goal and the paths that they started out with?
Yeah, so, I mean, one of the things investors look for in entrepreneurs is focus, especially early on. It's that laser focus on doing one thing really well. And even if, the challenge is, we want to back ideas that are multi-billion-dollar ideas. So often, that one idea morphs and grows beyond that. But what is important to see is that a founder and a team can execute on that one initial idea. And however long it takes to be able to do that, and we talk about product market fit, and there are a lot of terms for it. But getting execution on one area is important, and then of course you want to see it grow beyond that.
But Richa, do you think it's easy sticking to that first vision of yours and sticking to that path? Because it's easier said than done. That can you really stick to it?
I think a vision is always singular in many cases, right? And then you get people to co-own your vision. So the vision needs to be grand, it needs to be lofty, it needs to be futuristic. But in the entire process of building that vision out, you will face headwinds or tailwinds, and therefore it is always important to keep tweaking it, keep refining your ideas, to keep getting closer. The path you will take will depend on the external circumstances, on your constraints, on your internal circumstances, etc. And therefore, I don't see it as, hey, are we doing something different than what we set out to be, etc. Even the most, what I like to feel is, if you, and to borrow from what Sairee just told, you have to be resilient, right? And if you're not resilient, you're better off doing what the market leaders are doing and just endorsing them rather than doing something which is contrarian in nature and approach.
But what about your teams? I mean, a lot of this, like you said, it's not one rock star, but you need a lot of rock stars. So what about your teams? Because especially in the Indian context, you have not had startups for too long. So the talent invariably come from traditional industry. So how do you get them to think more creatively, design thinking, innovative thinking? How do you change that in your workforce? Do you train them to be that, or do you look for people who are already creative thinkers and hire them?
So we go with, our hiring philosophy is based on two things. One is we look at the will and the skill, right? And skill we feel is easier to acquire, and in some cases people will get on the job, but will is the most important thing. So when we hire people, we are actually thinking, will this person be relevant for us in the next 3 years? And I don't know what the business would be in the next 3 years or what challenges we will have. So for us, the will is more important than the skill, and therefore what we are saying is, will this person have a sense of purpose when he or she comes and joins us? And that is what we are trying to evaluate as such. We're not really going by, hey, you've been there, done that, so you come and do the same thing here, because then you're really not having a sense of purpose, you're just doing a job. And these people will not stick to you.
What about you, Sairee? Do you think, I mean, it's important to change the way organizations work, maybe, infuse that sense of creativity in them if they don't have it already?
Absolutely. We are big fans of that. So we run a career platform for women. A lot of our hires are actually from the platform. To us, what is the single most important thing is mission centricity. Do you get what we are doing? Can you help us creatively? And I think when people come into startups, either they're looking to make their own road. They are also at crossroads. And if the crossroads between the startup and the person matches, you have great teams. And also people come in with two kind of backgrounds. People are specialists or people are generalists. So there will be startup people who will be your every new project rollout person. They are like potatoes in the curry. You can throw them anywhere. Whereas there will be people who will be specialists who will come with one very specific skill. They'll only know their SEO or analytics or whatever. And I think their mission centricity is slightly less, even if it's less, it's okay. But people who form the core DNA of the organization have to have very high degree of mission centricity. They have to be more into it than you are, because chances are you're going to be out of and you're out building the market or investors or all of that. So it's the team actually who's really sort of, propagating the mission in a big way.
If I can bring this conversation back to you as individuals, Jalak, if I can start with you, what are the kind of challenges that you're facing, say even today, and how do you really overcome them?
Well, as an investor, you're inundated with lots of business plans, ideas. I mean, there are a lot more that are fundable and that I would like to get involved in that I have the capacity to do. So I always find that to be one of the most challenging and I'd say frustrating parts of the job. I love what I do. I can't believe I get to get up and do it every morning. But if there were one thing that I would change is, the ability to scale a lot more of what I do, or be able to kind of share my learnings back in a broader way with entrepreneurs. And then I also think if I want to take it back and look at the macro environment we're in, we're going to be entering, I think, globally a more challenging year than we've had in years past. And so, I have invested through two downturns, 2001 and 2008, and I've seen this movie before, but there are a lot of folks out there that haven't. And so really helping them navigate this cycle that we're about to see is one that, again, it's just part of the job, but it's going to be a challenging year for a lot of folks.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is riding the wave, literally.
Yeah.
But Sairee, in your job, where you're trying to get more women into the workforce, India needs it more than ever. With really poor kind of labor rates that we have, there are lesser women in the labor force today than it was 10 years ago, surprisingly. But what are your big challenges, and how do you overcome them?
So I think the first challenge we hope to resolve, I think we've got there. We want people to stop thinking this is an NGO. I think we are hardwired to think because we work with women, we must be running, a self-help group, or we must be sort of evangelical, or we must be asking for donations. It's very hard to say, yes, we're building a category, we're putting out a new way of doing things, we're building products around that.
Yeah.
And of course, I think part of this is to keep adding people to the mission. The more bright minds applied to solve a problem, the better we can get at it. So I think, and of course, mainstreaming it. It's still a very elite conversation. It's still a conversation you and I have. And I think what we really want to do it is desify it in some way, to say, hey, even a woman who lives in a Champaran or a Teni or a Guntur can have a conversation about her career. She may not use the term career, she may use a different term for it, but it still implies the same thing. It still implies the end impact. And I think large problem, we'll keep taking a shot at it.
Absolutely, like we've seen. I mean, it is profitable to work with women, to have more women in business, and Richa knows all about that. So if I can ask you, what is your big challenge, and how do you really overcome it?
Well, like today's challenge, as Jalak said, we are hearing winter is coming for all Game of Thrones fans here. So we are all trying to now see if our, actually take a step back and think that are we building really businesses which will be future-proofed, will have fan following from our customers for the brand that they are and for the offering that we provide. And for the teams who will stick with us because they absolutely believe in what we are creating. I think that is the most important thing for us right now, because as a startup, if the external environment changes, it really becomes very important to take stock of it and start arranging yourself to brace yourself for the hardships that would come.
I guess that's the big takeaway, right? Is your business really future-proof? Well, Richa, Jalak, and Sairee, thank you so much for joining me. You've been a wonderful panel. I think a great round of applause for the ladies. Yes.